right. Welcome to episode number 3 of Shift. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Anthony Cadigan, and I run a video production company here in New England called Cadigan Films. This week's guest is Isis Latham, one of the co-founders of Evolution Business Development, a networking group in the greater Keene and Peterborough, New Hampshire areas that aims to help small businesses increase their visibility and create a positive and thriving professional community. Isis, thank you for joining us. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how Evolution Business Development got started.
Well, thank you, Anthony. I'm really excited to be here with you today. I've been following along and watching your progression here, and it's exciting. Well, how we got started was about 2 years ago. I had been a stay-at-home mom for a number of years. I was working actually as a school bus driver. It was my last job before I started in a new profession of finance and asset management. And what I recognized very quickly was that it had not served me well staying at home. I needed to be able to develop a really strong business community around me. And so that was how Evolution Business Development was started. We decided that it needed to be free. We also felt that it was really important it be noontime for people who were doing a side gig. You know, people who were trying to get something started but working in a professional career during the days. And they could take a noontime lunch and come and join us.
So I want to get into attitude and mindset shortly, but first, kind of as a general primer, I just want to talk about networking sort of in general. I mean, how do networking events increase visibility for small business?
Well, you know, a lot of businesses, especially small businesses, are happening in their homes. So think about the idea that this can be very lonely, very isolating. The space doesn't allow for foot traffic usually. People who have foot traffic are usually in retail stores. They might be on Main Street. But, you know, if you're looking at the person who is developing a business around IT, or you're finding that person who's working in a yoga studio, they're unlikely to be able to find people to just walk in and come and use their services. And so they really need to develop a routine that allows them to get out there and be seen.
Now, what do you think that people get wrong about networking?
Well, I think that their expectations are often unrealistic. You know, I'll tell you a quick little story. You show up to your first networking meeting and you're nervous, you're scared, you might be sweating a little bit, and you start slinging business cards around. Everybody should take your business card, right? Well, what kind of a relationship are you building when you're doing that? And then they leave and they think, well, nobody called me. How can this possibly be working? So they might come back one more time, but usually they'll leave a long space in between. It's all about repetition.
Expectations, I think, are really important, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But just to address, so obviously, just the elephant in the room. I mean, we're talking about networking and attending networking events and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about how your own group has had to adapt since COVID-19?
Yeah, well, we've all become tech experts. Some of us more so than others, right? We're now using Zoom. So we're literally meeting in a room that's on a computer screen. And, you know, I talked about those expectations, being able to walk into a room, knowing that you're going to be standing amongst other people, knowing that you might be able to walk up and grab yourself some lunch, sit down. All of those things are expectations that people would normally have about going to a networking group. But now you're entering into a room that's a portal. No idea what the quality of equipment is that somebody else has. So it's really a lot of unknowns. But here's the thing. People are feeling highly motivated to participate. And sometimes those are people that are not the same individuals who were participating in the past, right? We've always been highly relational in our networking meetings. But now you're finding people who might typically isolate and like that are coming out because this offers them an even playing ground.
Right, right. So one of my next questions was, how has this impacted the group, and have you seen, more people attending? I mean, when you've shifted over to having meetings online with Zoom, like how has that changed the flow of the meetings and sort of the overall tone?
Well, it's a great question that you're asking because I was really petrified about this at first. It took me about 2 or 3 weeks to develop this Zoom meeting for our Evo Devo meetings. And I was afraid that I was going to open up my computer, enter the Zoom room, and maybe 1 or 2 people would show up. I actually would have been happier if nobody had showed up instead of just 2, because how do you keep a conversation like that going for an hour? And do you, tuck tail and run? Well, that was not the case, thank goodness. We did exactly the same promotion that we've always done. We started a Facebook group. We started a Facebook event. We posted it. We got a little buzz going around it. We told people we were trying something new, and they all showed up. We saw a whole bunch of new faces that we had not seen in the past. We saw people who have been unable to attend because of the distance of the drive, and suddenly they were in the Zoom room and getting tremendous amounts of benefit because of our change in the venue going online.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of pivoting. I can't think of any industries that really haven't been affected one way or the other, and I think that a lot of efforts, a lot of people have had to pivot and kind of shift their focus. I mean, this is a pivot for me. I mean, we were just talking a little bit about that, before we went live, and I think that we've kind of entered the world of Zoom, and it's there's pros and cons, but I think it's easier for some people to be able to network and to join other people in discussion. Let me ask you, what makes a good networking event or group, and how would you recommend that people find that?
That's a great question. What made a really good networking event for me personally was something that I was invested in. And that's different for different people, right? How you feel invested. But ultimately, you have to get invested. And so what I mean by that is I was invested to take the time to, and I'll say I probably called 150 people over the first month and a half to get them to attend. And again, it was nerve-wracking because I was telling them that they should come and take their time and attend this meeting and that it was going to be worthwhile for them when I wasn't absolutely positive, because I needed people in mass to come out. Now, when I say in mass, I mean, 15 to 20 people. That makes for a great group. But I knew that if we had 15 or 20 show up and then only 10 showed up and then only 5 showed up, that was something that was going to die. So I was invested in developing new contacts, bringing new people in, being able to help them to feel really comfortable and confident. Our particular group, I believe, does that really well. And that's why people keep coming back. But then I also find that a great networking group can look much more structured. It can have lots of rules and regulations. That really helps a lot of people to feel confident inside of their group. So you have to determine, what are your values? How do you feel invested in the success of an organization? And then follow through with those actions and get involved, stay true to it. Don't give up just because something is uncomfortable. Just like business, right?
That's perfect advice. How much of it? I mean, we're talking about a little bit of a time commitment, obviously. I mean, what's the proper balance? I mean, how much time should someone invest in networking?
Well, I think that is an answer that's specific to industry. It's specific to individual. But the way that you might want to look at it is, if I'm supposed to be working and I can't generate the work during those work hours, then what should I be doing to generate that work? So if you're early on in your career and you have no clients, well, then I would say you might want to be at a networking event 4 or 5 days a week. If you can only service 4 or 5 clients in any given 6, 8 week period, well, then you probably should only be attending 1, maybe 2 networking events. But make sure that they're target-rich environments that don't just put you in front of a whole bunch of new people, but help you to be able to develop credibility and that people can see what you're really made of. Because you show up, you bring your best self every single time. So it's not so much about how much time you're investing, but what's the quality of that time.
So let's talk a little bit about mindset. I mean, what should someone's expectation be if they are, starting to attend a networking event or a group?
It's a good question. So mindset is one of those words right now that's kind of thrown around everywhere, right? And I feel as though we need to define what mindset is in networking. Mindset is the expectation that you have, the attitude you bring to the table. So if you're in a bad mood, don't bring it. Leave it at the door on your way in. That doesn't mean that you need to be fake. You can tell people how you're feeling, but understand what the purpose of your group is. If that particular group is not supposed to be an environment where you bring all your baggage and toss it out on the table, then don't do it. Because people will look at you and that will become the way they see you. So better expectations for a networking group, in my opinion, are you bring a great attitude, you bring an attitude that wants to serve other people, and you understand that you're going to give 110%, and you're probably going to take about 50%. Actually, it's like any good business or like a marriage, right? If you expect to get everything you give, you will end up depleting the natural resources.
Solid advice. So we kind of brushed up against like building credibility. How do you build credibility in a group, especially if you're like the new person in the room?
That can be tricky because when you get into that room, you want to be bringing your best attitude, right? You want to bring the right mindset. So you walk into the room and the reality is that you're nervous as well. And so if you're a nervous person who talks too much when they're nervous, you might walk into that room and suck up all the air. Well, you might also be a nervous person who doesn't talk. Have you ever been around somebody who won't talk and you think, oh, well, you just think you're too good for us? Somebody will think that. So remember, it's not about perfection off the starting line. It's about building credibility by being willing to learn, by being invested in the group, by bringing somebody else with you, by showing that you're ready to give, not just take. And so I think one of the best things you can do is bring other people with you. It makes you more confident so that you don't bring your bad behaviors for your sidekick. Instead, bring a great person. And it'll also help them to know right off the bat that you believe in them as a group and you want to bring something special to them. Think of it as you walk in the door, you give a good gift, and then you sit back and you watch and you participate and you try to find the mood of the room and go with it.
I love that. So essentially what you're saying is, be ready to give, not just take. And I think that the reciprocation kind of takes care of itself. Now, so there is a messaging that you're trying to convey. I mean, do you have any tips for, someone to develop their message for these kinds of groups and meetings?
Yes, I do. Read a lot. Listen to a lot of different books on audio. Spend a lot of time with your nose in a book. Keep trying to get better, because I can guarantee you, and I'm right here with them, right, that your message is not as good as you think it is. It's not as clear. It's not as refined. But you know what? You don't have to be perfect. People aren't looking for you to be perfect. They're looking for you to keep getting better. So how do you develop a great message? Well, it comes down to very simple bullet points, because we get lost listening to people. So I'll tell you a quick story. I was part of a Toastmasters last night, and I was eliminated from the judging because I wrapped up too quickly. Well, that would have been perfect at my BNI group, because I need to be under 60 seconds in order for people to still listen to me. So the tips on developing your message is go in expecting that you're not going to be perfect, but go in with a lot of heart. Know that who you are is really valuable. So give something of yourself to the others so that they can relate with you. And if you use, a little bit of gentle body language or assertive body language or excited body language, right? All of these things come into play. People will connect with you, and they'll wait for your message to get better.
So you talked a little bit about body language. I mean, how does body language tie into your overall messaging?
Well, think about all the senses we have. So right now, you and I are participating in this video conference, for lack of better terms, and nobody can smell anything. They can only hear what we've made available to them, and they can only see what we've made available to them. Now, they can't taste anything. They can't touch anything. So all they have right now is sight and sound. So you and I now have a responsibility to captivate people with just those two senses. Well, it's very similar when you're in a networking environment. You don't know. Maybe they're smelling French fries and burgers and they're disgusted by that smell. You've got to overcome it. Or maybe they're smelling it and they're so hungry that they can't focus on what you're saying. Again, you've got to overcome it. And so as I got excited about talking about this, I started using my hands. I don't know if you can see them very well. I don't know if you can feel that my heart just started to race a little bit more, but I'll bet you can hear it in my voice, even if you don't find that you're able to see it in any other way.
That's awesome. And I haven't had lunch yet, so thanks for bringing up hamburgers and French fries, by the way, but that's all right. So what about Nat? Like, so I have traditionally been a very kind of, shy, introverted person, and being a business owner and talking to people has kind of forced me to become not an extrovert, but like an extroverted version of myself. So what advice do you have for just naturally shy, quiet, kind of introverted people? Like, how can they overcome that in a group setting?
Yeah, well, I think that you have to start with something before that. So the shy or naturally quiet person may be that way because of the way they were raised. It may not actually be their real personality. But let's say that that's not the case, that they really are truly shy and quiet, and that gives them a sense of well-being when they're in that environment. The next thing that has to happen is they've got to determine that they want it bad enough. How badly do you want to be able to get your message out to other people? If you don't want it badly enough, don't try to overcome it. It's okay. You don't have to participate. But if you're looking at networking as being a key element to what you really want to accomplish, that you need to get out in front of people, that maybe overcoming that shyness to speak publicly could actually help you to be able to become more confident in everyday life, then at that point you have to decide what does give you confidence. Is it having somebody with you? Is it taking notes? Maybe it's a piece of jewelry that you wear. Maybe it's breathing techniques. There are so many different things. And so that journey of being able to overcome that actually will help you to develop in every other area of your life, and it will be well worth it.
That's great advice. I appreciate that. And especially like, you know, that resonates with me because like I said, I've always been kind of the quiet person, and I've had to sort of implement some of that and force myself to be more outgoing and talk to people. And I think it's a person to person thing. It's a human to human interaction. It's, you know, business to business is still human to human. And I think that some people lose sight of that. So, you know, for people that are sort of just starting out with, you know, networking and attending meetings and events and things like that, what's a realistic expectation, or should people even have an expectation on how long it would take to actually, you know, see results and to know, you know, that these efforts are paying off?
That's an excellent question, and one that I field a lot. I think the average person does not allow enough time to see those results. And here's the interesting thing. It's not about linear time. It's about repetition. So if you go to a meeting that happens every single week like clockwork, and you show up 3 weeks in a row, now you've really been able to make a significant impact. If you go to a meeting that only happens once a month, it would take you 3 months to make that same impact. And it might not be as impactful simply by the fact that it was 29 days or so in between each one of those meetings. So I think that your results need to be based on, or your expectations of results need to be based on not just time, but repetition. I also really believe firmly that it is naturally 3 meetings in a row. And I've actually spoken with many people about this and received feedback that when they do attend 3 weeks in a row, that they start seeing exceptional results trickle in after the 3rd week. What is the most common mistake people make? 4th week, they don't show up because they got results. And now they have to start all over again. So it would be better to set up a schedule that you know you can maintain and come consistently 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and make that a natural part of your schedule and hold it like it was the most valuable client appointment that you have. Because ultimately, they are going to help you to be able to create monumental opportunity towards new clients.
Right. So consistency builds credibility, right? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So how do you stay motivated? So in that kind of time period where you're sort of ramping up, and you know, do you have any sort of, you know, tips on mindset and staying motivated, especially, you know, when it seems like it's not panning out? Because, you know, your mileage may vary depending on lots of things, your consistency, your messaging, your body language, your interactions, and things like that. So, how do you stay motivated to keep attending these regular meetings when you're just not seeing the results yourself?
I think that comes down to your personal inner grit. And
Right.
if you feel like quitting, you have to ask yourself, is this my tendency to just quit when things don't work? Or do I really have a gut feeling that maybe this isn't panning out because I'm not supposed to be here? And that's okay too. You've got to trust yourself and know that if you might have given up 3 or 4 weeks for no results and you're making a decision, do I continue? Well, is the only reason you're there to get specific results, or are you also there to give to somebody else? Because maybe your work is not done giving, even though you don't feel like your work has begun in receiving.
I love it. I love it. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that, again, I think it comes down to expectation and showing up ready to give rather than to receive. Because if everybody shows up ready to give, then everybody's going to get something out of it. If everybody's showing up looking to take, then that's, nobody's going to get anything out of it. So I really appreciate that perspective. So listen, so for people in the Keene or Peterborough, New Hampshire area, or even, like we were talking about a little while ago before we went live, I mean, you're actually having people come in from outside of those areas. I mean, now that you're on Zoom and there are online businesses that are looking to network and things like that. How can people find you?
Well, I think the easiest way, and Anthony, you and all of our viewers are going to know my age now because I'm going to say Facebook. The reason I like Facebook is it allows for the events to be posted. I know how to use it. It just works with my 45-year-old self. And so Facebook is the best place. You just go to Evolution Business Development. It's just a page. We don't ask you to join a particular group. And once you get there, you're going to see a thread for the week so that you'll see what kind of people might have participated in the last meeting. You might see pictures of people from the last meeting. You might even recognize them. And then when you look on there, you'll also see that particular, and we call it Evo Devo meeting. And so, for instance, last week it was Evo Devo 422. This next week, we've got Evo Devo. I believe that's the 29th, but don't quote me on that. And you just go ahead and pop your yes, respond yes that you want to attend. And, Facebook is good. It'll actually remind you the day of. It'll pop up in your notifications, and then you just click on the Zoom link and join us. It's really easy.
Awesome. Well, Isis, thank you so much for joining me today. I think you provided a lot of value.
Thank you, Anthony. I really enjoyed being here. You know how to bring out the best in people, and I really appreciate that. I think maybe we'll enjoy networking together.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that compliment. Well, that's it for episode 3, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Anthony Cadigan, and I will see you next time right here on Shift.